Hello everyone, my name is Elena Nichele and I'm a research fellow at the University of Nottingham in the UK. In this short presentation, I wanted to summarize for you the progress my team and I have been making on the project towards empowering consumers to co-design fast-moving consumer goods at scale by identifying hidden consensus. I've been working on this project with my colleagues Zach Ellaby, Jia-Hong Cheng, Christian Wagner and Andrew Smith at the Horizon Digital Economy Research Institute, which funded the project. This presentation is based on another presentation I delivered on the 22nd of October 2021 at the Association of Business Communication 86th Annual Conference. Just to give you a little bit of background regarding our project, it is cross-disciplinary and aims at exploring uncertainty and flexibility in consumer preferences. In fact, our final objective is to examine whether considering uncertainty and flexibility in consumer preferences could meaningfully inform product design. It is subdivided into three parts. The first one focuses on decision makers, the second one on consumers, and the third one on ethics. In this presentation, I will be focusing mainly on its first work package, which I am leading. Specifically, I will share the research questions I've been trying to answer, the dataset I've collected and analyzed, then I will share my main findings and conclusions, and at the end, I will explain how we are planning to develop our research further. As I mentioned, the first work package of this project focuses on the topic of uncertainty and flexibility in consumer preferences from the perspective of decision makers. Specifically, it aims at investigating the potential benefits and challenges of capturing consumer preferences through intervals and how uncertainty-aware data can be best communicated within the business context. To be able to understand this aspect thoroughly, I had to start by exploring what most commonly happens within the business context. According to common practice, quantitative consumer preferences are typically collected and monitored using the so-called ideal point values. This means that, usually, consumers are asked to choose one option among several alternatives. Even though this methodology is widespread, it presents challenges, especially as it does not allow to capture flexibility and/or uncertainty. For example, if we were a company that produced drinks, we could ask consumers how many milliliters of milk they preferred in their coffee or tea. After collecting the different preferences expressed, probably using a scale like the one you can see on the right of this slide, we would evaluate them all and find a compromise to accommodate as many consumers as possible. Nonetheless, some consumers could potentially not be sure about which options they like the most. Some of them could also be perfectly fine and happy with multiple alternatives. If any of these two scenarios were to be true, we will simply never know this using this methodology. This is why we are proposing to capture preferences using intervals instead. The input from our industry partner in the project, a leading company in fast-moving consumer goods, was also really helpful in allowing me to grasp how a prominent organization like this one captures consumer preferences using testing sessions, consumer mapping, and minimum viable products. Going back to the same example, we could allow consumers more flexibility by asking them to select a range of options they would be happy with, or just one of them if they so wish. This would give decision makers a better idea of consumer preferences, we believe. Additionally, this methodology could help decision makers identify consensus more easily and quickly by simply comparing the different intervals provided. At the same time, this could also rapidly point out if consensus is not possible to find. Therefore, this strategy could be both cost and time effective. To investigate the potential of this methodology, our team worked in partnership with a company that is leader in the fast-moving consumer goods. I led a 2-hour-long focus group with 3 employees, and we discussed their views on uncertainty with regards to the decision-making process and the potential benefits and challenges they envisioned in the methodology we proposed. The discussion we had was transcribed and anonymized, and it was analyzed using thematic analysis. Thematic analysis implies to be very familiar with the data and create some initial codes that could identify the key themes in the data. These themes will then be reviewed, labeled, and defined in detail to ultimately contribute to a report. I conducted a focus group with Ja Hong and Andrew. Then I analyzed its anonymized transcription comprising both the participants and our comments. The analysis was double-checked for interreliability by a student assistant, Eshani, who is also collaborating on the project. According to the analysis, the topics discussed by decision makers we interviewed happened in 3 different moments, characterizing the decision process, its beginning, middle, and end. In fact, the topics discussed regarded the input, the process, and the output of the decision making. The input dealt with the conditions in which the decisions were taking place and the nature of the effort determining such decisions. The process regarded the impact of uncertainty on the data, which were analyzed while working with both consumers and colleagues. In particular, with regards to consumer preferences, decision makers we interviewed discussed the importance of identifying consumers who were indifferent or flexible as opposed to those who had strict preferences. This distinction was key to business decisions, as consumers who were not flexible were more likely to be lost when their preferences were unmet. Another aspect that decision makers who contributed to the focus group pointed out was the impact of the questions on the scales provided to answer them. From the perspective of the decision makers, the scale they chose impacted the clarity, accurateness, and usefulness of the answers they collected from consumers and vice versa. Indeed, the scales provided to answer questions could affect consumer perceptions and how they express them to decision makers. On this slide, you can see all the topics that were discussed during the focus group and how these were interlinked and interdependent, as shown in the figure on the left. The table on the right instead lists all the themes identified in the data and how they were described for the purposes of the thematic analysis. To discuss each theme identified in the data, exploring each of the key topics discussed during the focus group, let's start from the input of the decision-making process. As mentioned before, this comprises two main components: the conditions in which the decisions take place and the nature of the efforts determining such decisions. So, in what conditions do business professionals usually make decisions? From what our participants told us, clarity and data are both key in the process. In fact, one of them said, "Our work, as far as I can see, is about being the clearest we can based on data about where we can go, where we cannot go, where we're not sure." Another one also explained, "We nowadays adapt to adopt the agile approach. So we test something quickly and we learn from the experience and we adapt and we launch again." According to the focus group discussion, talking openly with colleagues about decisions, including their most uncertain aspects, is vital as it contributes to clarity. Professional expertise also does and is therefore highly valued. At the same time, a balance needs to be found between cost management and timing, as decisions need to be finalized fast enough not to waste any competitive advantages. In terms of the nature of the input, participants commented that their decisions were always heavily based on data and that they usually mapped consumer preferences to inform their decisions. Their claims highlighted their high trust on data and colleagues, especially other decision makers, when finalizing their choices. What can we say about the actual process of decision making? The participants in our focus group highlighted the impact of uncertainty on the data analysis, which influenced their work both with colleagues and consumers. Ultimately, these types of relationships affected the way decisions were finalized and how uncertainty was reported as a component of both. Let's now see what decision makers actually told us about how they typically make decisions for their organization. One said something along these lines. Most of the time, it's a discussion. It's an open discussion with the team. We come to the team, we present the results, and we do the same even for the points that are not clear to us. Another participant said, one of the types of decisions we also make frequently is selecting the partners we want to collab with. Therefore, it could be claimed that the importance of working together as a team, contributing to joint objectives while taking advantage of each employee's expertise, was seen as key in the decision-making process and as a possible way to face uncertainty. Whilst investigating how decision makers capture and analyze consumer preferences, I was able to learn more about the importance of understanding consumers. For example, one participant told us that, in their professional role, the type of consumers they need to take care of the most is the one with stricter preferences, who will be easily disappointed and potentially lost. At the same time, another one claimed that consumers who are indifferent do not need dedicated attention, as they are easily satisfied with any products within the range. Therefore, during the focus group, participants pointed out that the ability to identify indifference in consumer preferences may translate into time and cost efficiency for them. Also, they have to give priority to consumers that would otherwise be lost if their preferences are not met. Finally, they need to carefully choose an appropriate scale to answer their questions, otherwise they may be unable to capture consumer preferences accurately. Through the focus group discussion, I was able to confirm that business decisions impact and are impacted by uncertainty. One participant, for example, mentioned the limited product testing as a cause of uncertainty. Another one mentioned the importance of exploring new directions as a key part of their professional role. According to the analysis I conducted, familiarity with decisions is likely to affect the level of uncertainty with which the decisions are made. By nature, decisions are unpredictable, at least to a certain extent. Nonetheless, repeated or similar decisions can be undertook with a higher degree of confidence, as the uncertainty of the outcome is reduced. Data available and their analysis also reduces the level of uncertainty involved in finalizing the decision. At the same time, financial and resource management, as well as timing and efficiency, are impacted by the level of uncertainty perceived by business professionals making the decisions. Ultimately, efficiency will also be reflected on testing that decision makers will be able to perform before launching a product, reducing uncertainty involved in that business decision. Finally, let's focus on what we defined as the output, or the final stage of the decision-making process. According to the decision makers we met, this involves them directly as well as consumers. As previously claimed, uncertainty influences both of these parties. Considering our findings, teamwork and efficiency were seen as key in business decisions, especially when dealing with uncertainty. Decision makers we interviewed pointed out a much needed balance between information quality and quantity. Therefore, uncertainty affected not only how they operated as professionals when finalizing decisions, but also when they were cooperating with colleagues, striving for efficiency and effective collaborations. Additionally, uncertainty impacted the final stages of business decisions from the perspective of consumers, as mapping them is a challenging task, and their preferences may be far from well-defined and/or permanent. Further confirming the importance of uncertainty in decision-making, our participants claimed that this concept had been evolving and was more and more accepted as an unavoidable component of the decision process, as business decisions had to be finalized with increasing rapidity, not to lose any competitive advantages. Even though business sectors could interpret and deal with uncertainty differently, its impact appears to permeate all sides of companies and all stages of business decisions. When asked how they currently communicated uncertainty in their professional roles and what their experience showed, our participants recommended to base decisions on data and their analysis, carefully capturing and monitoring consumer perceptions and preferences. They additionally suggested to discuss decisions openly with colleagues, as mentioned previously in this presentation. Based on these analyses and recommendations, we envision these key future developments for the project. As a team, we intend to compare the performance and accuracy of point values and intervals, depending on question types. Given the reported importance of teamwork, we also plan to investigate how to best communicate uncertainty to colleagues, intended decision makers. Considering the stated importance of consumer input, we are trying to explore how to best explain to consumers that they can use intervals to express their preferences too. We are very thankful that our participants have expressed interest in a focus group follow-up, during which I plan to investigate further how decision makers communicate uncertainty and the benefits and challenges they foresee in proposing intervals to consumers as a way to express their preferences. This second focus group will include a workshop, where participants will be asked to provide their feedback on examples of applications of the methodology we propose. The ultimate aim will be to illustrate how our method can be used to capture both actual and expected consumer preferences, irrespective of current products. It can also be helpful in exploring consumers' views of existing products. Finally, we would like to share with decision makers how they could implement our method and adapt it to their current needs and practices. Therefore, we will rely on their professional expertise and experience to guide the further developments of the methodology we propose. I hope you found this presentation clear and interesting, and I welcome any questions that you may have, or any feedback that you're willing to share, as it would help us progress further with our research project. Feel free to email me at the address provided. Thank you very much for your attention.